He said it with a smirk, tapping two fingers on the table like a judge with a gavel. I'm the big boss now. Take 2 weeks and you're gone. The room went dead silent. You could hear the air conditioner humming, that heavy kind of silence that presses on your chest. His uncle, our CEO, sat beside him pretending not to see how smug he was. The acquisition deal had just closed and the buyer's team was still packing up their files. I stood there, folder in hand, heartbeat steady, smile fixed. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply handed my business card to the buyer's CEO. He looked at it, then at me, then at my boss and started laughing. It wasn't polite laughter. It was the kind that makes everyone shift uncomfortably in their seats. My soon-to-be ex-boss's nephew straightened up, confused. The buyer's CEO said, "Well, that changes everything." He had no idea how right he was. The truth was, I had already changed everything long before that meeting, 2 years earlier. I was the one who built the numbers that made this company worth buying. I stayed late, fixed mistakes, and created the systems the nephew later took credit for. He came fresh out of business school, slick suits, big charm, and no clue what he was doing. His uncle called him the future. I called him a ticking time bomb. He used to bring me coffee, ask endless questions, act like he cared. I taught him lessons that took me 10 years to learn, and he learned just enough to be dangerous. When the CEO decided to sell, the nephew saw his chance. The ink was barely dry on the deal when I found out what he'd done. He cut me out of the buyer introductions, swapped my name on the final reports with his own, and told the CEO I was too emotional. He was grooming himself for the takeover, and I was in his way. That night, I poured a drink and opened my laptop. Anger burns hot, but strategy lasts longer. I didn't rant. I didn't demand fairness. I just started moving the pieces. I had a shell company one I'd set up 3 years earlier under a name no one remembered. It was a small consulting firm that handled corporate data migrations. It was mine. Every system, every backup, every line of code that made the company's product run had gone through it. They had no idea. They never checked. So when the acquisition started and the due diligence team began combing through assets, I made a few quiet adjustments. Licenses were restructured, access keys updated, ownership clauses rewritten. Everything was legal, clean, and properly signed. Every single data route, every automated process now ran through my company. It wasn't theft. It wasn't sabotage. It was strategy. I wasn't their employee anymore, I was their infrastructure. So when that smug nephew called me into the meeting, loving his new power like a kid with a loaded gun, he didn't realize the weapon wasn't aimed at me. The buyer's CEO, an older man with sharp eyes, took my card and smiled. His laughter came from recognition, not humor. "You're with Kestrel Systems?" he asked. I nodded once. That was my company. The same one that owned the very tech his team had just spent millions to acquire. He turned to my boss. "You didn't disclose this?" The CEO blinked, confused. "Disclose what?" The man leaned forward. "That your head of operations owns the backbone of your entire data engine, which, by the way, we just purchased for full integration." The nephew went pale. "That's impossible." "No," I said calmly. "It's legal. Clause 17, subsection C, the systems operate under third-party ownership." The third party being me. Silence fell over the room as understanding spread across their faces. The buyer's CEO leaned back, amused. "Well, it looks like the person we need to talk to, isn't you?" He nodded toward me. "It's her." The nephew opened his mouth to speak, but the buyer cut him off. "Tell you what," he said, "we'll keep her. You can take your 2 weeks, just like that." I was hired by the buyers as their new head of operations. My old boss sat frozen, watching his nephew's little empire collapse under the weight of his own arrogance. When the meeting ended, I walked past them without a word. He didn't look up, just stared at the table, fingers tapping that same nervous rhythm he'd used to announce my firing. Later that evening, as I packed my things, I saw the nephew in the hallway. His shoulders were slumped, his perfect suit wrinkled, his confidence gone. He tried to meet my eyes, but I didn't let him. "You planned this?" he whispered. I gave a small smile. "No, you did. I just let you finish the job." Now, months later, I sit in my new office. The plaque on my desk reads Director of Global Systems. The same systems they once ignored, mocked, and undervalued are now the core of an empire. I didn't destroy them. I just reminded them what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. They say revenge is best served cold. They're wrong. It's best served calculated, signed, sealed, and delivered in ink.